Hi, this is Kyle from GARBAGEtv for the Wasted Hour podcast.
So, hello everyone, this is Martin and you're listening to the Wasted Hour podcast, the podcast about fashion, artists, inspiration and creative culture. And today's guest is Kiel from GARBAGEtv. Thank you so much for taking the time.
No problem.
So we had our last talk, I think it was in July or so last year, and it was still summer, and you just told me that you moved back to Perth, and since you've spent more or less like 2020 there, and after being all around the world, I have to ask, what's your favorite place in Perth right now?
Or probably down the beach, because we're summer right now, so maybe like, it's a place called Trig Beach. It's where I grew up. I grew up there surfing, and yeah, it's where I hung out most of my teenage years, I guess.
Cool. But you've been, when we talked, you've been more or less all around the world, basically, but you started studying in Perth as well, right? Fine arts?
That's correct, yeah. I started fine art after being kicked out of high school running amok. So then I got kicked out of high school, and then I just moved into fine art. And then, I kind of just fell into fashion school. After my first year of fine art, I just fell straight into fashion and hit the ground kind of running on that. It's kind of fun.
But why, like, how was your first connection to fashion? Like, were you always interested in it, or did the connection come through fine arts, or?
I guess I was in that era. It was kind of pre Google Image. So I kind of started definitely differently. I did a project for my art class, and I made a sweater, and my mum was a sewer. So I made this sweater, and a friend of mine offered me some money for it. And thinking back, it was horrible. But I was like, oh, well, why am I doing art when I could be making clothes and selling them? So I started studying fashion. I just moved straight into it after that.
Yeah. Did you have like any idols or someone to look up to when you started studying fashion? When I first started, I really loved the ballet. My sister was a dancer, and I started work experience at the ballet very early on in my studies. So I really loved costume and theatre, and it kind of also played on music with the symphony orchestra being part of that. So I really loved that. And then I kind of started finding designers a little bit later on. Again, being from Perth, all you could find was what was in magazines. And a friend of mine had gone to Hong Kong on a trip and bought me back a Bernard Wilhelm pamphlet from one of his seasons, probably like 2004 season. So very early on for him as well. And my mind was just blown. I was just like, you can actually do anything you like. So I guess that was he was my first kind of eyes open to the world of being able to do whatever you like. Especially not coming from that really hard fashion background. I was just kind of like I just did art and skated and surfed. So all these things were really blowing my mind early on. It was really fantastic. And how did you go on from there? Like, how did you discover more brands and more designers? Like, did you bought magazines or? Because you mentioned it was like pre-internet, and I'm just curiously asking because for me it was more or less like the same. Like when I started being interested in fashion, like the first street style blogs came up like a little bit,
totally.
But they were like the old Google blogs, from Blogspot.
There used to be like a bookstore in Perth that opened up and started stocking a lot of like architectural magazines. I think one was called Box. I remember Box magazine, and then it started stocking like Dazed and ID, and things that like we couldn't like I hadn't really seen before until those magazines kind of hit Perth. And we're actually the most isolated city in the world. It's actually the furthest point from any other capital city within its own country.
Yeah.
So being from like this place that doesn't really have shopping or stores, it was a real eye opener once we started getting these magazines and books. I guess then from going from then, I started looking at like, obviously we found out about like the Antwerp Six, and you start also looking at like Alexander McQueen, which I think every fashion school around the world kind of, that's the first person they kind of learn about. And then in school, I guess I really loved like Walter Van Beirendonck, of course. I started really liking Henrik Vibskoff's work. And then Victor and Rolf, I loved a lot. I loved like couture. So yeah, I started liking like lots of little things about things. I really love costume. I guess that comes from ballet. I think you see it a little bit within GARBAGEtv. You see it with the styling, and certain pieces that try to be a bit more extravagant than just trying to keep it on this same path of streetwear, I guess.
Yeah. But what's the most valuable lesson you've learned during studying fashion?
Oh, I studied so long ago. I don't know. I think maybe deadlines. Before I had studied, I hadn't really had any deadlines. I kind of, like in high school, I just did whatever I wanted. I didn't really listen to anybody or do anything. It's kind of why I got asked to leave. But I think once I found something that I truly loved, I stuck to it, and I found that the harder I work and follow and try to finish things when I was asked to finish them, I guess the more work I started making and people started recognizing, which was kind of great.
Yeah, but it's like so funny that when you're like put in a system like school and where you don't care about anything like mathematics or stuff like that, but once you found something that you love, you become like so disciplined.
Totally.
That's like something I saw from myself as well. Like I would never pay any attention to school, but when it was about skateboarding and trying a trick for like 10 hours straight, like I was determined like to get it. But like
totally.
Only the stuff that like I was interested in. Like it's so, looking back, it's so random that I started caring about like skateboarding and then later on fashion.
Totally. And I think the two go hand in hand. I think it's kind of what's kind of the same as like the era of that I was kind of in. Hardcore had made like a resurgence, like hardcore punk music, and same with like kind of punk music had kind of come back from, I guess, late 70s, 80s, and then, you know, mid 90s to 2000s, it was very big. So I kind of had this attitude with skating and music, like I kind of don't give a shit kind of attitude. Until I found something that I truly loved, which funny enough, it was fashion. Just because that was something that I hadn't dreamt about it my whole life to do this sort of career. I just loved art, and it just so happened to have flowed into this this kind of medium, I guess, which turned out to be fashion. And then in the same breath, you can kind of put the same emphasis from hardcore punk music and skating to fashion, you know.
Yeah, Totally, I agree, because like at that time, like too, when in skateboarding, when you dressed like a certain way and your shoes looked like a certain way, or you wore like a specific band T-shirt, or like you wore like those big chains, like
Totally.
that were connected to your wallet, like you immediately recognized each other like on the street, and you know like, oh, that person is exactly into the same music as I am, or this person is skateboarding, and that was like so important because like you had to connect somewhere and somehow, because
Yeah,
like
totally.
there was no digital space for it.
I was actually talking to somebody about it the other day. There's I used to get, I think it was like Skater magazine, and it would have been like, people can't see me on this, so I'm not this super old person, by the way. But like Skater magazine, and you literally would flick to the back, so it'd be all glossy pages through the whole thing, and in the back would be this kind of newspaper part of the magazine, and it would always have like all these t-shirts, these band t-shirts and skate equipment and like shoes, stuff that you'd get from America that we didn't have at all, and you used to have to rip off, like at the back you'd rip it off and put your mum's credit card details on, and then put it in an envelope, send it away, and like 6 weeks later you would receive like a t-shirt or something. And I used to go through that and find like the most amazing graphics. Like I remember finding like Napalm Death t-shirts, going, what is this? And then kind of like looking them up on like Napster, and you could like download it or whatever. And then that's kind of how I got into a lot of music and bands, and how I kind of found my own personal style, I guess, by buying these things from America and kind of getting them shipped over. And I remember at high school, I used to get kind of beat down for what I would wear and how I dress, because I was really into punk music. So I'd wear like tight jeans and stuff. Yeah, it was really rough at school because of this sort of cultural influence, you know. But there was no internet, so it was very about making your own movement, which I find helped me later on, I guess.
Yeah. No, we have to dive into the music definitely later. But I'll totally agree with you too, because like with your own movement, and also like for me, like also at the skate park, it was like a place where you could exchange like opinions, and you would hear like about new bands, and there was also like up for debate, because like some people listened to like hip hop and others to like punk and hard rock, but somehow it all merged like together. And from that, like from a very young age on, like I loved all of this music. And it wasn't like single-minded, but it was like, of course, like I'm gonna listen to like Wu-Tang, and also like to some other hardcore bands as well. So
Totally. I think it's the same everywhere, anywhere in the world. This kind of movements were happening without people even knowing. You know, It's fantastic.
Totally. But when you like studied fashion, and later on, you told me that you worked as an intern for Jeremy Scott in LA.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
also
I was
also before that, you were in Antwerp, right?
Yeah.
For, was this your first internship there?
Yeah. It was really funny. I still keep this attitude, or I've changed it a lot now. I've gotten a bit more zen as I get a little bit older. But I remember, like with my final collection at uni, I kind of just was super over it by the end, and other people had taken photos of it, but I just grabbed it all and threw it in the bin. And my mum was like, "Hey, you should take photos of your collection," and the garbage man had already come and taken the collection. So.
But why were you so over it?
I really loved my school that I went to. We're just so far away from everything here, and I was just so inspired by everything that wasn't here, I guess. And I just got in this. It always relates, I guess, to growing up, and again, music was a big influence. So my attitude of like not really caring and being like, people like it, I don't like it, so throwing it all away. So I just kind of had enough of everything after studying fashion for a few years, and so I actually said I would never do it again. Okay. And I just threw everything in the bin and was like, I'm never doing this ever again. And then I saw a collection that Walter had made called Sex Clown, and it just, I guess, just re-sparked what I felt about fashion, and I just realized that I can't do it from where I'm at in my hometown. So I basically just ripped photos that somebody had taken of my work. Like I asked them, but I just took them off the internet, basically. Like, and back then it was like there wasn't. I think I had like the first iPhone had just come out, so it was still like flip 3 photos. So they were really bad photos, and I just sent them to Walter, and it was all on email. There was no. I think Facebook had only been around for like a year or two, and I sent it to him, and someone had replied a few times and said that they really loved my work that I was making. And it was quite costume based and eccentric and over the top. And so, yeah, next thing I know, it was just like, when can you come to Antwerp? And I was on a plane, like maybe 3 weeks after I had the email sent to me. And then, yeah, I remember just my first day, I got to Antwerp, rented an apartment. I didn't have much money, and I just got to Walter's studio, and him and Dirk rocked up. So another one of the Antwerp Six, which I was just speechless. And then, yeah, I just started my internship, which lasted some time.
Yeah. What did you expect, like, coming to Antwerp for your internship? Do you remember that?
I'm not too sure. I just really wanted to get out of this place where I live. I grew up here, and it's so small. It's like a small country town more so at the time than it is now. And I just needed to get out of here. So any chance I could get, I just wanted to leave. And then basically, when I got there, I had no expectations, to be honest. I was super, super nervous. It's like the king of fashion, to be honest, and still is and will be forever, I think, in my eyes. And one of the most amazing, beautiful humans I've ever met on the planet, pretty much. And I had no real expectations or what I was getting myself into. But yeah, I guess I was always kind of like that thing that goes back to having passion for what you love to do. I love to do it, so I put in as much work as I possibly could, you know.
Yeah. There's also the story that they tried to look you up on the internet, but you hadn't like a profile registered anywhere.
Oh yeah, I guess that goes back to that thing again as well. Like I really just didn't want to have internet presence. I'm still pretty bad at the internet now, like Instagram and Facebook, and I don't think it's bad. I don't think I'm bad at it now because I'm bad at it. I think I just don't really want to be a part of it. But in this industry and how the world's moving, you have to be a part of it to make what you're doing work. I still kind of don't back it, and I think it's quite fake, and it's everything on the internet isn't really real. Yeah, I'm not really the biggest fan. So going back to that, when I didn't have Facebook or anything, and they had tried to find me and see what I look like, what I do, and I got to Antwerp. They were like, we know absolutely nothing about you. And actually, I lasted from Antwerp through to LA, where I worked at Jeremy Scott, and then through to, I probably lasted like 5 years without email. Email or Facebook or Instagram. Even a phone. I don't think you could really contact me too easily, which I kind of love. I wish I could do this again. I'd love to just disappear and work, but it's just not possible.
Yeah, it's so hard. Like once you have like your first email address and you are connected to it, it's so hard to get back to it. You know, like once.
100%. You know.
Yeah, once you first installed like WhatsApp, like you can't. It's so hard to go back to just be like text messages or just
totally
a normal phone conversation. And I totally also agree with you about the internet part as well. I think like what's really hard these days is that it's really like a requirement that you have like an Instagram or a Facebook account, and you sort of like have to do it and put yourself out there. And also that you're like more forced to do it somehow doesn't connect in my brain, because like you're doing something more creative and you shouldn't be obliged to do something. And but you have to have like
people should totally look harder for things, you know, than just a scroll or like how many followers somebody has or a like. I also hate this idea of like chasing fame, or like, I just think it's just it. I didn't really like Facebook, and then when Instagram came along, it's just like, whoa, I just don't understand people's mentalities of trying to be something they're not, or just do it for clout, or how many followers you have. I guess I just didn't want to. I still feel exactly the same, and I feel like I would rather just kind of like, if I could, just disappear and work hard for the rest of my life than try to be how many followers I can get or how many people will like what I'm doing. I'd rather just do it and, I don't know, just not be around. I think like the true, the people who kind of paved the way for fashion in many ways, like Raf and Comme des Garcons, you know, Ray hadn't been seen for a long, long time, and Raf hadn't been seen for a long, long time. Margiela is a perfect example of being, you know, no face to what's going on. I guess I really love that idea as well, that you just keep working at something and maybe people will find it. Which is hard in this era, you know.
Totally, but I think like what I love about the internet is like the that you can like so easily connect like on a professional level or with like-minded people as well. But like the whole thing that goes into it, and that it's like people get famous or like chase the fame or like chase something that's just not there. It's like a really it's really hard.
Totally. Like I see so many incredible artists, like phenomenal artists, and designers that just don't have the following, which is kind of sad in this era, because I don't know how long they will last, you know, but they totally deserve more, you know, than just how many people are following them or what's going on. I don't know. I think there needs to be another way, but hopefully prevail.
It's so strange because like I think somehow they say the internet makes it more easier to be seen, but I also see that it's like more like a gatekeeper community as well, because like the number of your followers or the numbers of your plays or the numbers of your likes is like also very like sort of gatekeeping, like it was like a few years before that you have to be like on a major label or have like a PR agency, and somehow there's still like some people that decide like if it's the algorithm or I don't know, other people that like boost you out, that it's not like democratic.
Totally.
Like they sell it to you.
They also like, people also get to choose who is like, what is good and what is bad. And some people who have no, I don't want to get myself in trouble. Some people who have like, maybe they have no stance really, like they've never, not that you have to, but maybe they've never really pushed for more. They just have this maybe following, and you know, like we get asked a lot for free clothes, which it's just not something we do ever. So I think like, which has been kind of a bad thing for us, I feel, but also we're staying true to what we do. And hoping that it will continue to work the other way. That, I find the internet just kind of toxic, if I'm honest. It's so great that I can look up anything I need or want, or inspiration is there or whatever, but the social media aspect is just kind of, it's pretty toxic, I think.
Yeah, they're like very much there are a lot of sites on the internet, and some are like really dangerous, I think, as well.
Yeah,
like you have to be cautious. how to use it, all the tools that it gives to you.
Totally.
Just going back, because when you were at Jeremy Scott, like was the Adidas with the with the wings already out?
That was the first thing when I arrived in LA was the Adidas with the wings was the first project that we did, actually. So it was kind of really early on, but not that early on. To be honest, actually, Jeremy was, he did a collection called Food Fight, and it was in my second year of studying, and it was, I don't care. I think it was phenomenal. Like, it was amazing, actually, that collection. I feel like it was, people will argue, so I don't care if people argue, but it was definitely the first time I had seen a real crossover of streetwear and high end, and somebody take it to that. And I know he actually got, he kind of got a bit of backlash because it was
totally
that kind of like, this isn't fashion, this is streetwear. But just the prints and the colors and the shapes and I think more, maybe not even the shapes, just it was just so comical. Like the Snickers dress and a piece of pizza. It was really iconical, I think. It was like iconic to just see this, on like Vogue or like on a higher end scale. So I actually had wanted to work for him since I saw that collection. And I had started emailing, again, pre-social media, I'd started emailing him in second year, which he was replying to me. Well, I found out his sister was replying to me. Okay. And it was, I was like, I will quit fashion school and move to LA for a few months and do what I need to do. And then they were just like, no, finish school and see what happens. And I kind of forgot about that idea. And then obviously went to Walter, which was a dream after second year. And then I just moved back to the idea when I was in Antwerp, and a friend of mine, she was working in LA. So I just sent over I just sent an email through to the old email I had, and somebody got back to me, and then we started chatting, and my friend, was like telling him that I was in Antwerp at Walter, and one thing led to another. I just flew to LA, which was amazing, because LA is actually very similar to Perth in many ways. I feel like Australia adapted like American culture, but not to the extreme that America is. So, going back to, I'm going to keep going back to it, but like going back to like hip hop, punk music, skating, surfing, like America is, well, maybe what the world looked at in like the 90s and the early 2000s, all that kind of cultural impact, especially living, Perth's on the beach, LA's on the beach, just that same sort of lifestyle, except on acid. Yeah. In LA, it's just like that next level of craziness. So I loved it, actually. I loved LA. I loved living in America, which I tell people sometimes. Obviously, America is what it is at the moment, but it's just so good. It's so fun. Yeah. And everything I saw on videos and skate movies and like all the Baker vids, like I got to see all that when I was over there,
It's so funny because that you mentioned it, because like exactly this is the first time I was in LA. I just drove around and looked for like skate spots, and I was in Hollywood, and I looked at the Hollywood handrails and be like, oh wow, like, and I just stood there and be like, oh wow,
I know that spot,
Yeah, and
it's so good.
And you see like all the hijinks stuff like on the streets that they've just seen on the videos, and like people like fighting on the streets and like all the stuff that is happening. It was like, oh, this is really it. Like you just have to turn your head around and you see it, and that blew my mind as well. Yeah,
it's even like like Hollywood, like the stars, on Sunset. you kind of, I was like telling friends, like, I have to go and see these, you know, and they're like, you don't want to go down there. And you're like, no, I have to see it. When I saw it, I was like, oh my God, what is going on? This is crazy. It's so crazy. It's like what I see in these movies is exactly what, so I don't know. It was very nostalgic for me. And just living there and working for Jeremy, and he was so fun. It was a really amazing experience and a really great place to work, actually.
How long have you been there?
I was there for I think just over a year. But it was, it was just so fun. I can't, just working for him and the people in the studio, everybody who worked there was a lot of people from England there, some Americans, and then someone from Norway, and then Jeremy. And it was just super fun. It was one of the funnest places I've ever worked, actually.
Yeah, that sounds like a great environment.
Yeah, it was great. It was like I would literally skate to go get coffee every day, and it was just like it was like it was LA, and I was skating. It's just what I saw in videos when I was a kid. You know, It was like so just mind blowing. I was really lucky to have that experience.
Yeah. Like a little time later, you worked for Comme des Garcons in London. Was it straight after LA or?
No, I came back to Perth for a few months between LA and moving back to London, just to kind of chill out, maybe earn some money. I'm not really from much money, so I kind of learned to hustle and get money together when I need it. And then I made another collection, actually, which is hidden somewhere on the web. No one will find it. And then I kind of left here and moved to London, and I applied for a few jobs, and one was at Westwood, one was at Comme des Garcons within Dover Street, and then I was offered both jobs, and I thought, I don't know, I'd loved Comme des Garcons for so long, and Westwood, actually. Yeah. It was a very hard decision. I just, I don't know, at the time as well, there was only one Dover Street. It wasn't like there was a bunch of them. Comme des Garcons wasn't as massive as it has been. So I think I finished there in 2011.
Yeah.
And I think about 2013, 14, for me, I started seeing it everywhere. Yeah. More so, and then other Dover Streets started popping up, and I think that kind of brought awareness to the label. And obviously those who knew, but I don't think it was as crazy as it is right now.
Yeah.
Or it became. So I moved there, and I had some friends working there, and I just kind of started. I got promoted and started managing Comme des Garcons Black Label. It was an amazing experience as well, just working with like really beautiful clothes, and the people were amazing. Everybody dressed crazy, which I really enjoyed. Yeah. I really like when people express themselves more and more. I think people in England, art students and fashion students, are definitely. I've never seen people really express themselves so much compared to the rest of where I've been in the rest of the world. I think Antwerp, everybody's too busy studying. Everybody's like just so much work studying. Yeah. But I just really loved like how people express themselves in England. I think it was the best dressed people I've ever seen, I feel.
Yeah, it's
very, and maybe my own opinion, you know.
But it's very inspiring as well. Like the first time I was in London, like I've seen like all those crazy street styles that I've seen on the internet like a few years before.
Totally.
And it'd be like just like that something resonates with me and that I feel inspired. Like that didn't happen a long time before.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost like I feel like they dress like totally like Japan is portrayed. You know, and I think Japan did a while ago, you know, like fruits and stuff. And Japanese style is just so phenomenal. But I think London really, again, it might be personal preference. Some things weren't put together so well on some people, but the way they wear it and just kind of own that style is beyond what most people are doing. I've actually started seeing it a little bit popping up in Berlin with my, like, people hanging out with my friends and stuff. But yeah, London people were definitely just so wild, which was super inspirational. Like, you know, like I would go to work in dresses and skirts, and I started collecting Comme women's, and it really like made you want to push what you're doing.
Yeah.
Which is quite hard in Australia. It's quite conservative. Australians are quite conservative.
Yeah. But like after you've worked like for such amazing labels and designers, at what point did you like your first own label came into the picture?
So actually I was on my way back so my visas ran out in England, and I was on my way home, and I had some friends in Sydney. So I had moved to Sydney, and there was a label, Perks and Mini, that I came in contact with through a friend of mine who actually owns Good Morning Tapes now, which is another amazing label, music label, and clothing, who I kind of grew up with. And he put me in contact with, put Pam in contact with myself. And then I met up with them, and I ended up working with Pam for 4 years, which was amazing. And they're like family to me. I love that company and the people that are within that company. But when I had moved, once I had my position there, I had moved to Melbourne because they're based in Melbourne. And a lot of people were listening to disco and kind of fun house stuff. And I'd just come from Europe, and I'd been collecting kind of like more harder records, like kind of hard techno, jungle, breaks, industrial. What else was I listening to then? Yeah, just more like hard electronic stuff. Obviously, I was also into hard style and things like this, but I pulled that out a little bit later. But no, I just thought there was like a little gap. There was obviously older heads in Melbourne doing it at that point. But I met a friend of mine. I met someone over there, and he was quite young and into the same thing. And we were like, let's start an event. So we held one event, and it was like really hard music. Not many people came because nobody knew who we were. I just moved there. And then he started studying. So I was like, I'm just going to continue to throw events with harder sort of music. And then I gave the event a name, which was, Garbage. Not necessarily on the basis that I thought everything else was garbage, but kind of as like a joke. I was like, everything's garbage here. Yeah. Everything wasn't garbage in Melbourne, by the way. I love that place. It feels more home to me than Perth. And I do like disco and Italio and all this other music. I do really, really like it. And my friends that were throwing parties at the time, that was so fun. Everything in Melbourne was so fun. I just wanted to do something a little bit harder, so I called it Garbage. And then I just started making a few graphics on some T-shirts, just to coincide with doing it while I was working at Pam. And then a friend of mine in Perth was like, "Oh, how would you like to do more with, like, you should release more teas?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to, but I haven't got any money and I don't really know how to push it too much." And he was like, "Well, what if I help out?" And slowly we got to talking, and he does 3D stuff, and I was like, let's try to incorporate that. And then I guess I started making a collection, and Garbage was kind of born and yeah, obviously that person's the other half of Garbage, which is Rhys Scott.
Yes.
And yeah, so we just started working together, and one thing led to another, and slowly we made a collection. We sold to Dmop in China, and we were like, whoa, cool store, big store, likes what we're doing. Then just out of the blue, V-Files started really loving and backing everything that we were kind of doing, and really supporting us with showroom, and just, yeah, it was really amazing. Actually, our first ever showroom, we went to Paris with 2 suitcases with no idea. Obviously, I'd worked for Pam, so I know showrooms, but they're so expensive. So we just hired an Airbnb with some rope, and just tied rope around the room. We actually got a really bad review, like such a horrible review on Uber. I had to cancel that account actually, but we just kind of like stuck rope up around the place and hung everything out. Yeah. And we didn't think anybody would come. We were like, we'll just hang it all out around the room, walk around the streets, and try to, like, if I see people I know, because I'd been going to Paris for so long, I was like, I'd just be like, hey, come check out what I'm doing. And then we ended up with a few emails from, like, V-Files were one of the first to come, Love Store Japan, who were still with them. Dmop came, Essence came. So, like, there was a few people that, like, really kind of started to like it. And then from that season, V-Files loved it so much, they started a showroom and they invited us to come and show. So I guess that's kind of how it all progressed. It progressed really fast. It basically went from working at Pam, doing parties. The parties, which I'm sure we'll talk about, they started in 2014. Yeah. So I'd been doing them for a few years before actually doing clothing at all. And then when we started doing clothing, it just, people enjoyed it, and yeah, it took off. So we basically just kind of hit the ground running. I moved back to Perth. Rhys actually flew to Melbourne, and we drove my car from Melbourne to Perth, which, if nobody knows, it's actually a 6-day trip.
It's so long, yeah.
Yeah, it's so far. So it's actually non-stop, 6 days across the Australian Nullarbor, which is just a desert. Yeah. Kangaroos, desert. It's pretty dangerous, actually. So yeah, we just drove back. I drove to my mum's house, unpacked my stuff, and then the labels. I just started working on it full time, and one thing led to another. Where we went to Paris and did all that stuff, and people started enjoying it and buying it, and like, people would argue, but I think we sell to, like, the best stores. Some of the best stores around. So, and we have done since the beginning. LNCC have been another store that, which is actually my favorite store. Like, it's such an amazing store.
It is. When
it opened, the concept of it and everything, and I've stayed friends with the people who originally started the store, who are very heavily into music as well, which is incredible. And then just from then, the buyers who have taken over, I've become quite close with, and friends, and they've been with us. I think we're on like 4 years with LNCC now, which is like, we're a label that's there for a while, which is phenomenal. Totally. It's really great.
Yeah, that's also like where I saw you for the first time, because it's no secret I'm a big LNCC fan as well.
Yeah, cool. Well, they're so amazing, it's phenomenal.
I discovered them, like, I don't know when it was, but I think I bought one of my first Trees pants, like, online, because back then they stocked Trees, and I saw Amazing. I saw it like online on Tommy Ton's Street Style blog. I saw this pair and I was like, oh, where do I get it? Then I Googled it, found LNCC, and then just like 2 years later was my first time in London, and I got to the store. And I've been to like Darklands in Berlin before, which is like a non-conventional store where you have to ring a bell and something like that. But still, like, cool. I loved it, like at LNCC, and just like to see it and how they did everything like for a while really inspired me as well.
Yeah, they're just actually I was at Comme des Garcons when they had opened their store. So I hadn't met them or knew anything about them yet. We were just invited to the opening of this new store in one of the worst parts of London. Like it was in Dalston at the time. Now is the place, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was in this like, if people knew what was in that store, it was like, wow. And then I was actually in Paris one season with the people I used to work with, Pam, and I was with Misha, who's one half of Perks and Mini, and we went out to this club called the Piano Room, and there were these guys there dressed in Rick Owens and Comme, but still a little, you know, rough around the edges, but wearing these like incredible clothes. And then here's me wearing like head to toe Pam and probably like a Comme hat or something, you know, and a little bit rough around the edges. And then we kind of just were like into the same music, and I just started chatting with them. And again, yeah, we just stayed in contact from that point onwards. They're doing amazing things around the place still. But yeah, it was really amazing when I started stocking there. It was like my dream. I've actually like ticked off a lot of my dreams, you know, like I was like, I want to be in Vogue, and you just start ticking them all off quite fast.
Yeah.
And you hope it's not too fast, you know?
Yeah. No, I get it, because like since like I think it's 5 years now or 6 years, and like you've already like achieved so much. And I think because like what you're doing with Garbage TV, you and Rhys, is, I love it because it's so special. You know, it's not like being, oh, what could sell, what's like potentially could we place there, but you just like staying true to yourselves, and also being like special with all those graphics, and like being very very rough around the edges, like you're saying, and but still get into this kind of stores. And I think, like for me, and that's also why when we came in contact and was like really happy to get you at the Wasted Hours, because like it's authentic, you know, like it's not being like, oh, we throw in some punk references and some like psychedelic references, this and that, but somehow you've lived like through all that, and you still live it. And
totally. Especially the psychedelic part. No, I was joking. Not really, kind of. Am I allowed to say that?
Of course, you can say it. But I think like people know it when they see it. You know, like that's why it resonates with people.
Totally.
With people as well, and also like the first great reactions that you had sound really great. But besides of like ticking off your boxes, like what made you go on with the label?
It's been a crazy ride. If you speak, I think maybe all labels, I think you have to be kind of insane in a way. I think it makes sense, everybody I've worked with, how they are and who they are. And I think it's like you see labels constantly starting up, and it just takes a really different kind of person or people to pursue it and continue with it. Yeah. I remember everybody I've ever worked for, I remember Pam going like, oh, you don't want your own label. And it's not to like stop you from doing your own label. It's just like, yeah, you don't want. And then I find myself telling people now, like, it's so much. It's just the making part isn't the hard part. Like it's the production.
Yeah.
You know, that is, I think making more than one thing. And then because of how we try to keep true to who we are and not follow trends, and like we don't care what people think at all, I think it makes it harder because, like, you know, we want to make a pair of pants. We only make 10 of them.
Yeah. And
no factory in the world wants to make 10 pairs of pants. So we have to find factories, which we've gone through so many factories just to try to just help us out and make 10 pairs of pants.
Yeah.
And then that kind of staying true thing is it's what we're about, but it's very difficult. It's like it's so difficult to try to keep doing it over and over. Especially Rhys and myself, we actually don't come from money at all. So we're just trying to, I guess we just love it. I don't know. There's no other reasoning for it. I like being able to, I kind of like to, I'm super passionate about it, and I like people to know how I'm feeling, I guess. And I tell that through art and through design. And I think Garbage really portrays my kind of no hold back, fuck you, I don't care kind of attitude, which is, it will be with me forever, you know. And I think it really shows that. And I think Rhys has the same mentality, and that's why we work together, and that's why it works together. And we're kind of like, I think like, you know, I'm very not stable and Rhys is very stable. So it kind of works. He kind of pulls me off the ledge every week. I don't know. It's probably every week. Yeah. So I don't know. I think that's the passion behind what we're doing. We're just super passionate about it. And we love just creating stuff, creating anything, telling a story, and I guess just pushing what we believe in, pushing what we're about. I think that's the main thing, is just really pushing what we're about.
Totally. And I think that's also what makes it worth it at the end of the day, because like, as you said before, and like me being self-employed as well, I know the feeling that you sometimes ask yourself, why am I doing this? Or there's like 85% of stuff that you're doing that has nothing like to do with the thing that you're passionate about, but you somehow like have to take care of all that stuff too. But
totally,
yeah, I somehow like, it's like, so it's my passion and it's my outlet to have something and put it out there that keeps me going, and like there's nothing else that I want to do. And I think that's what keeps me going on, and not being like earning like a lot of money and being like getting rich from it. Like that was never the motivation behind it.
Exactly. And I don't think you can, once you've done this, I don't think I can, like it'd be really hard for me to work again, you know, like a 9 to 5 or do something else. I also like, this sounds really cheesy. I know this sounds lame and cheese. It's real cheese, you know. And actually, coming from hardcore and punk, I totally get how juxtaposition this is, and how like it really doesn't make sense to me either, because of how I feel growing up and being so against a lot of stuff and quite angry at things, to what I'm about to say. But I think like I really love fashion, like real fashion. Like I went to a show in Paris last season with a friend of mine, and it was it was just so beautiful. I just find, you know, when I see Margiela, like it brings something out in myself. Like I almost cry, you know. Yeah. It sounds stupid, and that's what I mean. Like I should be against fashion. Like I should be really like, I don't like this, you know, because of everything. But I love it more than anything in the world. And art, sorry, they both go hand in hand. When I say fashion, I mean art as well. But it's when I see real design and things, like work put in and thought and concept, which again, like it's funny because I say this from Garbage TV's perspective, but you know, I think you see bits of this in our work, and I think our label, we try to do what we can with the money we have, and we've tried to make, you know, something that is viable commercially, but also is plays on that idea of we don't care, just because of our backgrounds and how we don't have that kind of funding. But when I see it, that's why I love to express myself like that through Garbage TV. And when I see all the other stuff like Margiela, I just have to put it at that. That is, when even with Galliano, it's just so amazing.
Totally.
It's an incredible, like it blows my mind to see that still being made. When people say you can't make, originality doesn't exist anymore, and like, you know, it's bullshit.
Yeah,
it's absolute bullshit. Like it clearly does. Comme des Garcons, like Ray Karakubo, has been changing things
for the last
forever.
Yeah, forever. Really,
like when she started making more money, I guess, off play, her clothing, her women's wear just became unreal. You know, like you can't. It's like to the point where it is just costume, and she doesn't care. Like it's just that stuff. This is what keeps me going. This is what keeps Garbage going. When I see people like her pushing those boundaries, I know Garbage TV is not Comme des Garçons.
Yeah.
And I know it's not Margiela. That's definitely not what I'm trying to say in this conversation. I just think when I see this, it keeps me going for what I love. If they stopped, or if this sort of thing stopped, and it was just some labels that are just happening, I probably wouldn't keep going.
Yeah.
You know, I'd probably be like, it's done. Time to just do art all the time. But because these things are going and these people are still pushing it leaves me actually speechless to talk about their work.
It really fuels like the passion, I think. Like when I saw it in 2017, when I was at the exhibition at the Met Museum at the Comme des Garçons, it was really just like for days and days. I just kept like going back to it in my head and be like, wow, this is like so out of everything. Like you can't really put it somewhere, and that's what I love about it. Because like when I see something, like somehow like I have like my categories and try to be like, oh, this and that, but when something challenges me and I can't be like, oh, like what is this, and it keeps going for me and I keep thinking about it, like that's when stuff is like really interesting for me as well.
Totally. When it really evokes emotion as well, you know, like I'm not lying. Like I when I see the first collection that Galliano did for Margiela, like I'm just speechless about it. And, you know, it just makes me brings tears to my eyes, you know. Actually, like, it sounds so stupid. And that's what I mean. That sounds stupid because fashion shouldn't be so serious, I don't think, you know. And I don't think it is serious, you know, in a sense. Yeah. I don't think it is so serious. But then the way I feel about it and how I shouldn't feel about it, because I really do hate a lot of things.
But
I love a lot of things. But I love this. Like, I love this.
It's your passion.
And when I wear it, when I look at it, I could never afford it growing up. Like, even though I wasn't really into, I mean, when I say growing up, I mean like fashion school and even working in Antwerp and stuff, I couldn't afford it, you know, when I was younger. And then now I still can't afford it. You know, I looked at a Margiela jacket the other day. It was like $3,500. You know, it's like, I just can't do that. But I think when I see it, it just evokes this emotion that I just can't get away from. And maybe it did that from the very beginning when I was more like, you know, I had no idea about it. But when I started making it and working with it, I feel like it evoked this emotion inside of me that made me just want more to do with it, you know?
No, I can feel it too.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, I love it. You know, I think it's just the creativeness of it. And I've even had these thoughts, you know, what if I just stopped doing everything worked and then I could just wear it? You know, like I just afford to buy it and wear it, you know. But I think I like my output in this industry as well.
Yeah, I do too. Before we dive into the music part that I'm looking forward to, I have to ask, because like you said, when you said about your sockers, and when we talked like in July too, you said you're being more selective about the stores that you work with. But how did you came across the Wasted Hour?
Well, I guess, to be honest, I look at labels I like. I'm not a salesman. Like, I design and do the art, and neither is Rhys. That's the crazy part, and maybe that's why we don't move forward as quickly as we would like to. We're just not the best at sales. We're really lucky we have a good showroom now, which is Awaken showroom, and they support us. And the guy who owns it is like a friend of mine through me going to Paris a lot of the time. So we're really, I guess, with that stuff, I kind of see labels I really like, and then because I don't know much, I'm not the best salesperson, so I kind of like look at labels and their stockers and labels that we would look good sitting next to, I guess, and then stores that sell us as well. So like LNCC and like Lessons Store and Addicted Soul, all these stores that I go through their kind of label lists and what kind of labels we sit really well next to, not that are similar to us, that sit really well next to, and generally that's how I find stores. And then I come across them, and then I see stores that I feel would be a good match, like the Wasted Hour, and then I turn around and heckle you till you buy something. No, I don't know.
but it's funny because like I saw you at another showroom in Paris before, and then you connected with Awaken, and shout out to Awaken showroom because they also stock Story MFG, and then the connection was made.
Well, this is the thing as well. I love Story MFG. Yeah. The people who own Story MFG are two of the most amazing people. I've become friends with one of them, I think he's one of the most amazing people. Over COVID, kept in contact with me, and just even small messages mean so much. Yeah. And that's kind of also that's kind of how we kind of find you, how we found your store. And I think like sitting next to those sort of labels also means a lot to me. And I like seeing labels like Story MFG and kind of like Good Morning Tapes that are also in there. Definitely shout out to Good Morning Tapes. And then I like this as well. This same as the showroom, these people are like-minded, and just the ethos, that they hold towards what they're doing. That's what I feel we do, and that's why we sit well with them. Yeah. I think selling to, Rhys and myself, we were offered like a really big amount of money to sell to this store, no names, but this store, which they just do what they do. But for us, it just wouldn't fit, we just couldn't fit next to in that store with the labels they sell to. It also changes the perception of what we do and who we are. So sometimes you've got to turn down a lot of money to grow slow. I think that's also our main focus is it'd be nice to live, but at the same time, it is super important to grow naturally than forcefully try to like outgrow the label before it's even had its chance, I think.
Totally. I think that's also like to have the long-term a long-term goal, which is like so hard in an industry that's like always like so fast and everything. So
totally.
And then being like, no, like you see the bigger picture in like 2 years to 3 years and everything, and like learn along the way and grow with your challenges. Yep. And I think that's what's really healthy, because I've seen like a lot of like it's also that parallel like with music as well. When you miss like certain steps, like going up, like you fall even easier, I think, like because when you have like set your foundation and with stuff as well. And for us, like we're like the Wasted Hour, it's like really super small as well. Like I'm having like my first intern now after 2.5 years, but then
congratulations.
Thank you. And that feels like a huge step like to us. And like when I talked the other day, had like a sales meeting, and they were like, and how big is your team? And like to this day, I always like tell the truth. Like we were really small and everything. And then we're like, so, oh wow, like we didn't expect that. Like people from the outside perceive it as much bigger, but of course, like we had like opportunities to skip some things, like, you know, and do something to grow faster. But like sometimes I think like it's easier to have like the experience and then like 1 year later and be like, oh, can we do this or not? But I'm really afraid of, as it's so fragile too when it's small, to miss something.
It also will just become like, yeah, you might, if growing too fast is just, it's not necessarily a good thing. It can definitely, you know, the bigger it is, the harder it falls kind of idea.
Yeah.
Not that it's a bad thing though, but it's nice to grow slowly and like naturally.
Yeah.
Than try to force this, or like, you know, drop something down, or like, yes, maybe for your store, like stock something that's not really in the vein that you're trying to push what you're trying to do, but just do it so that you make heaps of sales.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's best to like stay true to who you are and what you're doing. And people should continue to enjoy what you're doing.
Totally. That would be like a perfect last sentence, but like as mentioned before, we have to talk about music because like you once said music will always be a part of everything we do. Like speaking of GARBAGEtv, what's the first record you fell in love with? Or that you really like, or like the first band that you were like a big fan of?
Okay. Let me think. So there's always a story. I started when I grew up. I played drums since I was 6, and I played jazz percussion by the time I was like 13. Yeah, about 13 or 14. Mm-hmm. So I was really into that sort of music until my friend gave me. So I went to a kind of a rough high school, and everybody was into metal, and not necessarily metal's rough, but everybody was into metal. By the time I got there, everyone was smoking weed, and, you know, so like I was kind of like, whoa, what's going on? And basically it was like play metal or get out. So I went from playing like, you know, jazz to then kind of, okay, I'll play, you know, Metallica or Pantera or Slayer or, you know, that sort of metal. So I started joining that, but I remember a friend giving me, what was it? My first ever cassette. It was a cassette, and it was Offspring Smash. Yeah. And then that was my first kind of intro to like fast punk music, which people totally argue me or fight me on the idea that that is like a punk music, but it was. Smash was actually, I remember it vividly, the feeling that gave me when I listened to it. I was like, and I'm not even a big Offspring fan. I'll say like I wasn't a big fan ever, but that tape, I would have played it till it died. I think that tape, it blew my mind, you know?
Oh, it's time to relax. That's like...
Yeah, totally. Oh, yeah. It was amazing. And then a friend gave me a Nirvana Nevermind tape. And I went through, so I think I kind of, this was when I was like, so our year 8 is year 12 and then you turn 13. And this was all in that same year. And I think I kind of really fell in love with Nirvana. It was to be honest, that was probably the first band that blew my mind properly that I fell in love with. And I listened to that constantly, and I wasn't allowed to play drums in high school because I could play drums, so they made me play guitar. And I learned Nirvana Nevermind back to front guitar like it was the thing, you know, and I just jam it. Like I was kind of like the opposite to everyone. I was like, I'm not playing unless we're playing Nirvana, you know, like I was crazy about it. And then I think I heard the Misfits and Ramones. Again, I think I found it in a catalog of a skate magazine, and I was like, that Skull, you know, which sounds really cliche, but I definitely, this was like 96, 97 maybe. So I was like, blown away with like this music, especially the Ramones. Actually, like I love the Misfits, but the Ramones were really like fast and just like 2 chords. And I was like, this is cool. And then I started looking at like who these people were playing with, you know, trying to figure out more and more, and buying like Krang the magazine, I think it was called, maybe at the time or something. And, you know, I started finding like bands like The Descendants and Minor Threat and Black Flag. And then I heard Madball for the first time, and I was like, this is it, you know, Madball's it. This happened really fast, by the way. This was all within probably like a year of just like, 6 months. I was just like, this is what I like now. And I started liking all this music, and amongst all that as well, it was like Blink-182 and AFI, and then a lot of screamo bands started coming into the play, and then also like I started listening to a lot of more metal, and grindcore, and you know, like Napalm Death, and I started listening to like Sepultura, and I don't know, these things all, and I was playing them all at school. Music was everything. Music and my art class was like, that were the only 2 classes I really went to a lot. Like if you needed to find me, I was probably in the music room most of the time, you know.
Jamming out Nirvana in Bloom.
Yeah, just like slamming it, you know, and then still playing with the metal guys and still playing, you know, but I really started like, I guess like 15, 16, started just really just falling into like hardcore punk sort of scene. Which again, no one really at my school was about that. Everybody was pretty rough. They were just, you know, everything started getting harder for them, and tougher and rougher, I guess. And I found my escape through Perth's hardcore scene and hardcore music. And like I found like-minded people in that scene, and people who were angry with me or like upset with me, or really I just figured out a lot about myself within that scene, and they always had open arms for me. And I just go to shows every weekend and skate, and it was really, really, really an incredible kind of time in my life. I think high school was hard, but it was also just like, what I found and what I loved. Even just like pop punk and screamo music was, you know, like Taking Back Sunday or something. It was just like super incredible. Every time I heard a new band, I was just blown away by that sound. I didn't think, I just remember it just sounding so, it just resonated with me. It was crazy.
There was like something, I think like I talked the other day to a friend who had like the same, like we met when I was 19, he was like 7 years older, 26, and then like until this day we'll be like, oh yeah, around the time we'll listen to the same bands, and when we now talk about it, I'll be like, yeah, my hard drive wasn't like full, but there was something new like every 2 or 3 months. And even like I think my 13-year-old me would argue with my 12-year-old me about which music is better, you know, because like then like
totally.
Then, like metalcore or deathcore came into place, and that was like onto that for a long time. And it's like, so I really like sucked it all in, like from all the music. I wanted to hear like everything. I wanted to know everything. And when you talked before about like, also like with Nirvana and like The Offspring, like until this day when I hear like this music, it evokes like, it's not the feeling that I heard for the first time, but I know like it's so burned deep into my brain, like the feeling that it comes across with it. Like it's still...
I know every lyric still. I think I know every lyric to every band that played through that. I could literally, you know, I put that on and like sing it in my car, and like I'm like, no one understands me.
It's just the other day, like some Blink-182 came on in the car, and I was like, I totally lost it. Like I sang through it, like to Aliens.
It's so good, you know.
Aliens
like
exist, like from the from this album. Like it was a religion for me, like for a few months, and that I can remember it even now. And like today or these days, I can't remember like a lot of stuff. But like these lyrics are burned into my brain forever.
It's crazy. It's so crazy. I remember as well, like we had a lot of festivals in that era as well. That's when Perth was kind of dead for a long time with festivals and people coming to Perth, and we had this Australian tour called Soundwave, and I'll never forget, like, you know, like Newfound Glory and Avenged Sevenfold, and, you know, these bands would come over, and it's just crazy. Like, I remember it being like this, just the feeling and the people I knew and the music and jumping around, moshing and jumping off stages, and which, you know, I did a party. I threw a party a month ago, and I put a band called The Chains, which is a local Perth band. Obviously, everyone's locked down, so I don't bring internationals over at the moment. But yeah, I put this band at, like, I like to do it at times where they'd never play. So, like, we put them on at 12:30 a.m. in the morning, and they went after this guy playing like some techno set, and then just people just went from 0 to 1,000. And these kids, because I guess hardcore isn't as prolific these days, you know, so like these kids just started losing their minds and moshing and jumping around, and it was just the same feeling as what it was back then. So it still exists. It's just, you know, it's just as you get older, you start looking at other things. And, yeah, but the nostalgia of it all, you know, it's crazy.
Yeah, but still at the same time, like, there's always, like, once a year something comes and surprises me, like, totally. I remember, like, I think, or like 3 years ago when I saw or when I heard Death Heaven for the first time, I was like, I completely lost it. Like, I was like, they're so good. And then when 3 years ago when I went to Turnstile concert for the first time, like, that's totally, I didn't know about them, and they just were about to blow up, and there was a club, it was sold out, and sweat was dripping like from everywhere, and I was like, it's like, still they have like the same feeling like when I'm like 15. And
they are so good, Turnstile, as well. Like
it's still,
yeah, it's pretty amazing. I went to Madball and Sick of It All for Halloween when I lived in London, and I hadn't been to a show for a while, and it was just like, it was like I never left. It was so good, you know.
It's a really great capsule. I'm very much looking forward to when we have like a car ride, actually.
Totally.
And, like, keep playing songs to each other. And also what I love is when we exchange emails, and besides all the business stuff, we exchange like good music recommendations.
Yeah, totally.
I love that too. But like the next step that I'm looking forward to is to have GARBAGEtv at the Wasted Hour, and I'm very much looking forward to working with you. And I can't wait to have like the first collection in store, and also like the first stuff that I ordered for myself and put it on.
Awesome. Amazing. We are, like, you know, I guess every label in the world is suffering right now, stores included, like lots of stores. And I've found like people really working together. I think in a different, well, I don't know, I think differently, but maybe in a different scenario. Like if things were happening, maybe stores would drop you, or, you know, you wouldn't work with that store anymore, and all this, you know, craziness that us as labels and the stores talking to the labels and everybody's worried about, you know, I think normally. But I think because of COVID, it's really made people work together more.
Totally.
And understand each other, and really, like, things can't always be, you know, now. And things can't always be in place when you want them to be in place. And we have to work together to make things work, not just COVID, but things in general. And that's why I like this. I like this with Wasted Hour, and also like LNCC work. Shout out to Rhys at LNCC. Like, he really, like, you know, gives advice, which you just don't have to, you know. People don't have to write nice emails and exchange music, but, you know, through this time, I find that everybody is doing this. It's a really hard time for everybody. I know, like, I think we're catching up to everybody who's had it really hard, like in London and yourself. And Perth really hasn't had an outbreak of COVID. We're so far away from everything, and we shut our borders to anyone coming in and out. It's crazy, you know. So, but because we work internationally as GARBAGEtv, Rhys and I have kind of been hit really hard with factories. But again, like I say, it's such a crazy time, but also so nice to do things like this and things that coincide with fashion, and, work together to make things work, I think.
Totally agree with that. And I love like the approach that you're having with the label. And I think it's a very great match. And I'm very much looking forward to when we meet in person soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Cool. Thanks.
Party time.